The world of geopolitics is shifting once again, and this time the spotlight is firmly on Asia. Two of the world's most powerful leaders, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi and China's President Xi Jinping, have met face-to-face in Tianjin at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit, and the statement that came out of their meeting has caught the attention of the entire globe. They declared that India and China are not rivals but partners. Think about the weight of those words, partners, not rivals. For two nations with a long history of tension, border disputes, and strategic competition, this message has created shockwaves. For decades, the world has watched India and China with caution, sometimes even with fear. These are not just two countries. These are civilizations, both with populations of over 1 billion, both nuclear powers, both economic giants. When they come together, the possibilities are enormous. When they stand apart, the risks are equally massive. And now, after years of bitter disagreements, especially after the deadly clashes at the Galwan Valley in 2020, both Modi and Xi have signaled that it's time to press the reset button. Why is this happening now? Why are two leaders who often stand on opposite ends of the geopolitical chessboard suddenly choosing to call themselves partners? The answer lies in a mix of economics, strategy, and global politics. Let's break it down. First, the economic angle. China is facing slowing growth, rising debt, and pressure from the United States. The trade war with Washington is taking its toll, and the once unstoppable Chinese economy is showing cracks. India, on the other hand, is emerging as the world's fastest-growing major economy. Global companies from Apple to Samsung are shifting supply chains to India, seeing it as the alternative to China. For Beijing, maintaining hostility with New Delhi is no longer sustainable. It risks pushing India further into the arms of the US and its allies. By extending a hand of friendship, Xi Jinping is trying to ensure that India does not become a permanent part of Washington's anti-China camp. Second, the strategic factor. The United States is strengthening its alliances across the Indo-Pacific through the Quad, through AUKUS, and through deepened ties with Japan and South Korea. India is central to Washington's Indo-Pacific strategy. But Modi has always emphasized strategic autonomy, if will not be anyone's pawn. This is the perfect moment for Xi to remind India that partnership with China is still on the table. That Asia must lead Asia without interference from the West, by saying partners, not rivals. Xi is presenting a vision of an Asian century where Beijing and New Delhi work together instead of competing under US pressure. Third, the symbolism of this meeting cannot be ignored. This was Modi's first trip to China in 7 years. The last time he visited, the atmosphere was filled with optimism. But then came Doklam Galan, trade disputes, and a freeze in high-level dialogues. Direct flights were suspended. Visa policies tightened. Military tensions rose along the line of actual control. For years, India and China stopped talking directly at the top level. And now, in Tianjin, not only did the two leaders meet, but they also agreed to resume flights, ease visas, and establish new communication mechanisms. This may sound simple, but in diplomacy, symbolism matters as much as substance. It shows that the ice is finally melting. But the big question is, can this really last? Can two nations with such deep mistrust truly become partners? The skeptics will remind us that China has often spoken about peace, but acted differently on the ground. Even now, Chinese infrastructure buildup along the border continues, and India remains cautious. Trust, once broken, is not easy to rebuild. And yet, this new statement, partners not rivals, is a step forward, signals intent. It opens a door that was long closed. For India, the timing is interesting as well. Modi is entering a phase where India's global role is rapidly expanding. From leading the G20 to hosting major international summits, India is being seen as a voice of the global South. Repairing ties with China does not mean giving up partnerships with the US or Japan, means giving India more room to maneuver. It means having multiple options, multiple allies, and a stronger hand at the global table. And for the average Indian and Chinese citizen, this partnership could mean something very real. More trade, more opportunities, more cultural exchange. Imagine direct flights reopening, tourism flowing, students crossing borders for education, businesses collaborating. A stable Indo-China relationship doesn't just shape geopolitics, it shapes lives. But let's also remember that great power politics is never simple. Behind every handshake, there is calculation. Behind every smile, there is strategy. Xi Jinping is extending this olive branch not just out of goodwill, but out of necessity. He knows that China cannot afford to be isolated, surrounded by hostile powers. Modi, on the other hand, knows that a stable relationship with Beijing gives India breathing space, gives India leverage, and gives India more confidence to assert itself globally. So, is this the dawn of a new partnership? Or is this just another moment of sweet words followed by bitter actions? That is the question the world is asking tonight. But for now, the message is clear. India and China are trying to turn a new page. Partners, not rivals. That phrase will be repeated in headlines, in diplomatic circles, and in history books. Because if these two nations truly move closer, the balance of world power will shift. And here's where it gets even more dramatic. The United States, Europe, Japan, all of them are watching this very carefully. A stronger Indo-China partnership could mean less influence for the West in Asia. It could mean that Asian powers dictate the rules of the 21st century, not Washington or Brussels. It could mean that the dream of an Asian century, long spoken of but rarely realized, is finally within reach. But this story is not over. In fact, it's just beginning. Because what happens next on the border? In trade talks. In multilateral forums, we'll decide whether this new friendship survives or collapses. For now, the world has received a message of peace, of cooperation, of partnership. But in the background, the old tensions remain, like embers waiting for a spark. And so, we are left with a mixture of hope and caution. Hope that Asia's two giants can walk side by side, creating prosperity for billions. Caution that this could also be a temporary pause in a rivalry that runs too deep to disappear. History has shown us both possibilities. The future will tell us which path Modi and Xi'll choose.